Well, we're here with another ClueCon Weekly, and I'm delighted this week to have as our guest Lorenzo Emilitri. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Good. I'm pleased we got off to a good start. I've known Lenz many years around Asterisk and various other things. But before we get on to your focus of Q-metrics within Loway, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a background, Lenz, about how you got into the crazy world of telephony in the first place and how you ended up kind of doing what you do right now.
Okay, so I started with, well, I always liked telephones since I was a kid because like many kids of my age, I was born in '74, I like to explore and poke around the telephone systems in different ways, let's say. And but this was mostly like a hobby when I was a kid. A long time ago, around 2003, I founded a company with another person, and one of the things that we had in mind was to offer voice over IP. And we started playing with the H323 systems that were nice compared to what was before them, but they were very closed and very inflexible. And so basically you would buy a switch and the switch would cost so much money, and any additional functionality would cost more money and very often would require more hardware to be plugged in. So at some point we started playing around with the idea of building small call centers. And these small call centers were basically impossible to build on those systems. And we started playing around with Asterisk because at the time it was the only thing that was there and that was working. It was before Asterisk 1.0, so it was not exactly a model of stability. But when we realized that we could build basically anything we wanted with it, and we didn't have to ask permission, and we didn't have to ask anything, it was wow, a great moment.
Pioneering days.
Yes, exactly. And like at the time, UpQ, the queuing system was totally new. So one of the first customers that we installed with it was had the problem of measuring what was happening within their call center, because within a call center, it's okay, you have the telephony part, and that's important, but the part that is really expensive is people. And plus, in a call center, even if it's not that big, it's very hard to understand what is going on. Even if you have a floor space of 10 people, so it's not big in any sense, it's very hard to understand if they're busy, if they are answering correctly, if everything is going according to what you expect that should be happening. So at the time I said, okay, it must be easy to write something that basically goes along and tries to understand what goes on and produces some graphs and some indications. And of course, I got this totally wrong, because I expected it to be like a couple of weeks of my life spent on this and then move on to something else.
And like underestimation of the work involved.
Yeah, let's say so. It's a planning issue. It often happens. And when I started with this, I really didn't want to do it myself. So I posted on the mailing lists I think it was Asterisk users at the time. And I asked people if anybody had something that would just work, so I didn't have to do it myself. And what I got instead was people that were sending me email privately saying, I need this. Are you really going to write it? I actually need it. And at some point, I got a phone call from a guy in South Africa that managed to find my number and tells me, I already sold your system. So I don't know. I said, I don't have a price. It's not ready. And he says, I don't care. You tell me how much I have to wire you and where I have to wire you. And you send me the unlimited, the unlocked version, and please, please do it. So I realized there was interest in this, and a lot of people were interested. So I kept on working on these initial ideas, And it's been 15 years of my life spent on this. So it was not really clear from the start what it would become out of it. And it was a very nice experience because I came to meet a lot of people that are living in basically any place in the world, and who have very different backgrounds, very different ideas of what they need and what they expect. And it's been, from a personal point of view, very interesting. And from a professional point of view, what was something that I expected to write in a week is now a company with many people in it, and offices in 3 places, and so it's been way more than I expected it to be. I'm basically an engineer, so I like the engineering part more than the marketing part. So if we were able to do this, and I think we did everything wrong, because we have very clear pricing that appears on the website, because that's what somebody like me would like, not talking to people to find the best possible solution in terms of pricing, trying to get a specific pricing, and being very open about the issues and what works and what doesn't work. And I mean, it worked even if we did everything wrong from this point of view, likely. And so it was very, personally, very rewarding. And it was also quite interesting, because Voice over IP started from being some geeks in their bedrooms that were playing with these things, to something that is basically anywhere now. So whatever you use now, if you call your doctor, if you call your dentist, if you call whatever, you're going to hear the music on hold that is from PBX, or that is from a system that you know about, or you hear Allison and you say, hey, I know these guys, I know what this thing is. And the nice part, of the measure of success of how it went, is that they don't. So they have no idea, it just works. So they don't really have to worry about it. And I think this is major. So it's something that really changed the world.
So just rewinding in that story a little bit, Lenz, you said you were originally considering H323 and using port 1720, as you would have back in those days for that. But you discovered Asterisk. How was it you discovered Asterisk and therefore sort of got interested in SIP?
Because I really don't know. I really don't remember. Maybe it was like a web search. I came across the mailing list that had a lot of content at the time, and there was basically nothing else. Don't even remember if Digium was a company at the time or not, or it was still Linux consulting, whatever.
Linux support services, that's right, back in the day.
Yes. And so I basically said, okay, let's try it. And it was very pleasant. There was a lot of reward, because being used to traditional voice over IP, and anything like this existed at the time, it was in like a couple of afternoons, I had something that worked and that could interoperate. They had a like H323 module initially, and then we said, okay, this is good enough and can live on its own. And it was, I mean, there were surely problems in terms of stability, in terms of what to expect. Things were changing all of the time. But the nice thing is that was good enough for real life, these things, even if, of course, the bandwidth for multi-site systems was way more limited than it is today, and many things maybe didn't always work. It was good enough. So this idea of being good enough, of being able to do things without going through all the hoops and being 99.99999% available, that were the things that were traditional for telephony, being always up, always available. This was not really important. People cared about building new things out of it, and that thing was really easy. And it was not only easy, it was rewarding when you were doing it. And this was, it was something that got you hooked. Like you do it and say, hey, I can do it. I think that maybe in 2003 we did we set up an asterisk somewhere so that people could for Christmas, so that people could call in and leave a voicemail, and then we published the voicemails of people leaving Christmas messages. I mean, it's stupid thinking about it after 15 years, but we got people from the other part of the from all over the world calling in and leaving their messages and say, hey, we exist, that there is somebody on the other side of the screen, like there is life on this planet.
That's really good. Now, it sounds like you initially got the idea of doing the contact center stuff because you were trying to solve a problem you had yourself. So where in this story do you transition from building software that solves your own problems to actually doing this as a full-time thing to solve other people's contact center problems and not actually having your own contact center customers anymore?
I think it was pretty by the beginning because I didn't really like the implementation, the custom implementation part for physical things, because in the area where I lived at the time, I was living in northern Italy. There was nothing so interesting. I always liked way more the software part, so the software development and designing. And so I immediately came across people that had huge problems. So were trying to build large call centers, or had even back in the time when AppQ was born, people were saying that's really a game changer for people that were used to building call centers. But a call center without metrics is no good. You don't. It's not really useful. People don't care about the voice switching. They care about who is available, who is doing their job, and because they pay a lot of money for it. And especially,
I often say to people that if you've got a contact center, you've got a contact center supervisor somewhere who wants to see all the reports and find out who's doing what and how long it's taking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so you're quite right. Where we get excited about the telephony side, but in reality, it's the workflow and the metrics, isn't it?
Yes, and it's from the point of view of contact centers as an industry, it's basically the other way around, because books on contact centers from 20 years ago would say that the cost of running a contact center were 1/3 for the hardware, 1/3 for the people, and 1/3 for actual telephony. Nowadays, the cost of telephony is zero. The hardware is so cheap because it's Asterisk, it's free switch, maybe it's hosted, and it's very, very, very low. What remains, and that has not changed much, is that you still pay for people. And if that used to be 1/3 of your expenses, now it's maybe 70, 80%. So it's even more important than it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago. So it's this is from their point of view, this is totally essential. On the other hand, what we see, and this is something that we have seen happening in the last few years, where we started basically a version of Qmetrics that is hosted. So you don't have to do much with it. You just have a monthly subscription that may be, I don't know, $50 or whatever it is. And a lot of people that are coming up to this are not real call centers. So are not people that would think of themselves as call centers, but are things that are maybe small, maybe they are offices of any kind, businesses of any kind, but they, as everybody does, they are taking calls. And for $50 a month, it would be stupid not to understand what is going on, not to have a wallboard so they can see what's going on, and not to be tracking who is available, and even if at a very small scale. The problem here is, in a sense, scaling down, because what is very appropriate for people that are large, so they want to see not complex, but I don't know, first call resolution. It's not rocket science, but it's very important if you are a professional, because you need to demonstrate that you're doing things right. If you are a doctor's office, maybe you don't really care about first call resolution, and maybe you don't even care about the average, how much time your agents are idle versus they are busy, because they are if they're idle, they're basically doing something else in another room. But still, it's important to understand if you're getting calls, if people are served quickly or not, if they are able to reach the person they want to talk to, or get the information they wanted or they were not. And all of these things at a very reasonable price opens up a huge market that is not traditional contact centers. Those people don't really know about. They don't think they have a contact center. And when we talk to them about contact center, they say, "Oh, I don't have a contact center. I don't need this, but I want that wallboard. I've seen that wallboard on the website, and I want that thing." And you say, "That's for contact centers." Say, "Okay, in this case, I'm going to get it."
Yeah, it sounds like really you've kind of democratized the ability to get call analytics, if you like, that was previously the reserve of large contact centers that paid large amounts of money. And of course, Asterisk and FreeSwitch kind of shattered all that, and you've got some technology alongside it. But now, in putting it in a hosted and an even more affordable package, then anybody with an Asterisk or a FreeSwitch can get on there, whether they feel they've got a contact center or not.
Yeah, and especially the people that are liking this a lot are telephony providers, because telephony providers typically are serving relatively small customers, because of course small customers have a less risk than a large organization that maybe still want to have everything in-house. They have strong IT, and they want to make sure that everything runs the way they want it. For telephony providers that gather to smaller organizations, this is important, because if an office with 3 extensions, 5 extensions, maybe doesn't really care, if you start going to an office that has 10 or 20 extensions, not even agents, so it's something that is smaller, having this kind of feature, at least being able to offer this kind of feature, say, if you want, you can also have this. It's cheap. You don't have to do much. It just works out of the box. And a lot of people are liking this. So it's, in a sense, this complements their offering. So they are happy with it. And of course, it gives more data and more visibility to end users that in the end are the guys that must be happy with it. And they are way happier than we expected them to be, frankly. Again, this goes against my own business sense that must be like risible, or I don't know. It's surely not the best thing that I can do in my life. I'm way better with Clojure or Java than talking business. But on the other side, I believe that if you are able to help people solving some real life problems, nothing too abstract, something that is maybe something you don't want to do, something that is taking a bit of your time that you don't want to spend, people are very happy to use a service that is going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many people have been blessed with income streams in the world of VoIP and RTC by solving people's problems. Well, it's not just VoIP and RTC; it's the world, isn't it? If you can solve people's problems or people's minor irritations, then they're very, very pleased to pay for it. Now, one of the places that I meet you very regularly, Lens, is Astricon. Of course, I've met you over in South Africa as well for the Asterisk Africa Community Conference a few years ago. But thinking of Astricon, when was your very first Astricon? Can you cast your mind back and tell us a bit about that?
I think it was pretty late, maybe 2009 or 2010, but don't remember.
Was that Colorado, Washington, D.C.? Or was it in Phoenix?
No, it was, I think it was Atlanta one, but I don't remember if it was the first one. I don't really remember. I'm not very good at remembering things. But well, I believe it was in Atlanta. I think it was, because I found some pictures.
Sorry?
In Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. That in that case, that would probably make it 2012, I think, actually. Atlanta, well, that was 2012 and 13.
It's possible it was 11 or 12. Yes, something like this. It could be.
Yeah. Oh, but you've been pretty regular since then, haven't you?
I think I attended them all after this because well, it's the community is very nice. It's very nice to meet people in real life that you have been talking with during the year, even if it's not strictly business related. And it's very nice to see. I mean, the thing that I really liked about the I have an episode that I think sums it up quite a bit. I was with one day. There was this guy that was banging along on his laptop, and that I'm not sure we were introduced. He was near Simonovic, and
Right, yes.
he was like in a room and was fixing some things, and I was just passing by, and he looks at me and says, "Hey, you see, it's here." And it was, I don't know, a bug or something. And I go look at the code and I say, yes, I agreed with him, which was the problem, and we found a solution. I was like going from one room to the other, and you cannot do things like this in real life. You don't find somebody who is debugging C code and says, hey, there is a problem. And I say, okay, yes, there is. And so I think after this, we started being friends and meeting more regularly. But it was totally random. It was like
that is, yeah, real community. And of course, there used to be. It's not been a feature of more recent Astricons, but there used to be the code zone, didn't there, where people could sit with their laptops and faff and fiddle about and look at.
I think that Nir was basically, I don't know, looking at something and was just talking out loud, because
right.
and I say, okay, yes, it is, and you form friendship in a way that is very different from real life. And plus, geeks in general have a lot of interesting things to say that are not only related to code. So it's usually people that have a large set of interests and very often are very competent on them. And you always have a lot of things to learn. And there is somebody, when you have some crazy idea, there is somebody you can talk to and that is going to understand what you're saying. And this again is important, because it's not common to say, yes, we could do this. And people say, yes, it's a good idea. I like it. Let's try it. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe nothing special will come out of it, but it's fun. It's a different way.
There's like-minded spirits there, aren't there? I'm reminded of an Astricon a few years ago, I think in 2015 in Orlando, where Tim Panton just briefly mentioned his idea of integrating a Bluetooth-enabled toothbrush with Asterisk. And all of a sudden there was a mini crowdfunder, and we had a whip round in the room to get the funds to buy the Bluetooth-enabled toothbrush for him to have a fiddle about with. And yeah, it's that sort of craziness and fun that's kind of evident at these community events. Now, before we get on, I think you're going to be coming to ClueCon, or at least Lowway are going to be coming to ClueCon. But before we talk about that, can you tell us what your main products are? I know that there's Qmetrics, and I think you've got a dialer as well. But just in case anybody that's watching has not come across these things, can you just give us a quick rundown on them, please?
Well, basically we have three main products. That is, one is Qmetrics, that is a monitoring and reporting suite for contact centers that works both with Asterisk and for FreeSwitch. And it's that is meant to be it's an on-prem system. That is the first thing we started developing 15 years ago. Then we have a live version of this that just works and is meant is optimized for providers. So we are able to basically get a set of API. You can deploy, undeploy, change, do whatever you want right from the API. So you can. It's very easy to integrate in an existing workflow. If you have, for example, a FreeSwitch system that is hosted, that is multi-tenant, it's very easy to decide that some people get some data, some others don't, and depending on the way it's you want it to work. And then
Right.
we have a dialer that is called Wombat Dialer. Wombat Dialer, for a reason that is pretty stupid, that is when I started developing it, my kids were very young, and we had a book that was called "Do You Know What a Wombat Is?" That is a very funny book, for kids. Was about a nice wombat that was making a lot of mayhem without realizing that he was doing it. And so I had to create a project, and of course I say, okay, how do I call this? You have to create a Git project somewhere and give it a name. Plus, I work with Java, and with Java you have namespaces, so you need things to be in a specific place from a logical point of view. And how do I call it? I call it dialer. No, dialer is a lame name. And how do I call it? How do I call it? How do I call it? Okay, let's make it Wombat. We'll change it later. And as you can realize, we change it later is the kind of later that never ends.
The name
But
stuck.
it remains stuck. But it's as like the mascot of the product, because the idea of high density dialer this is used in scenarios from very small, where you can basically tell it what you want done, and it's going to follow through, recall, track, do whatever is needed until it's able to get somebody. Or
Lens, can I just interrupt for a moment?
And may have thousands of the I think pretty nice, and then we get nice graphics for for the communication side.
Can I interrupt for a minute then? So would Wombat be a power dialer or a predictive dialer, or what sort of thing would it be?
So Wombat does them all, meaning that it is predictive. Predictive is a special industry in a sense, because when 10 years ago, there was a lot of interest in predictive. Predictive was, maybe you were not using predictive, but you wanted something that was predictive, at least on the box. Nowadays, luckily, the laws that govern what you can do have changed, and have changed definitely for the better. So I think that, for example, in the US, nobody's using predictive anymore. So at this point, the fact that it's predictive.
Can you just explain what predictive is, Lens?
Yes, the idea of predictive is a predictive dialer is a system that is able to basically the problem that a dialer is trying to solve very often is dialing a lot of numbers where nobody's ever going to pick up. So what it does, it says, okay, if I know that only 10% of calls are going to be answered, I don't really need, it would be useless to have my agents that I pay all of the time wait for the 10th call that is actually answered. So what I do is I could dial 10 calls at once and expect that as I get only a good call out of 10, wherever one agent is free, I can dial 10 calls, and I know that 9 out of them will go nowhere, and one of them will be okay for the agent. So this is the kind of problem that is trying to solve. Of course, in real life, this is not so easy from a statistical point of view, because many things have to be taken into consideration. So we went for a system that does statistical optimization plus learning across time to try and optimize the best ratio. But anyway, the thing is that nowadays, luckily, in most countries, the idea of just dialing a list of numbers where you have no reason to dial them is not something you want to do. The other things that you can do with the dialer instead, that are similar from a technical point of view, but are very different from a business point of view, that are very legal and very useful instead, for example, is calling people and synthesizing messages. I don't know, your car is ready for pickup at this time. You don't want to, you say, call David and tell David his car is ready. This is not so easy because David may not be available. His phone may not be under coverage. You may want to try David on his mobile and then at home, and maybe he tells me, please call me at this time and not this other time. So call David is not so easy as it sounds and requires a bit of logic. Or you have other cases, for example, if you want to do snow weather alarms, this is something that we see used a lot, or for schools, where you want to dial a lot of people at the same time because something bad happened, and so you want people to know that they should not be sending their kids to school today, and you want this to happen in 5 minutes. You want everybody to be notified in 5 minutes. So this is something that is quite interesting because you can very often with Wombat you can put the two sides of the coin together, and so send a message that is personalized and customized. But also give people the opportunity to talk to somebody else, to a human with a low latency. So Wombat tries to optimize for this. And so that if you need to talk to somebody because you need further information, you can do it in an efficient way from the point of view of the person that is called and from the point of view of the caller. And at the same time, to be able to send out a lot of calls whenever this is ready, wherever this is actually needed. So it's nice, and it's an interesting. Sometimes it's an interesting problem. One thing that is interesting here is that you realize very often that you can dial with modern hardware. You can do a real lot of calls in a very short time, and so sometimes for very huge campaigns, we have encountered problems where people were basically dialing too fast and ending up giving issues to the providers upstreams that are provided to it, that are supposed to be real life telcos. So they're very big and have big offices and buildings and all the flashy gear. And then with
but they can't cope with a high number of CPSs.
Yes, and instead with when you plan a campaign with them and they say, yes, sure, we can take how many calls you want, all the channels you want, no problem. And of course they say, it doesn't, and then in real life, it's not exactly so. So you have to slow down from the point of view of the caller. But I think they will learn in time.
Yes. Now, you said that you're integrated with FreeSwitch now. How recently did you get the FreeSwitch integration going for Qmetrics?
We built it, I think that we started building it last year. So more or less beginning of 2019. Actually, it got started in the last Asterisk Africa conference. That was 2018, maybe. And because I was basically having a beer with a couple of people, and they were telling me how good FreeSwitch was for hosted telephony. And they say, but we would really like to have Qmetrics working on this. And they say, and of course, what you get out of this must be easy. So it's, again, and in this case, it was not really complex to do, because we were able to get the events out very easily and to reformat them to a format we could understand, and it was not especially complex. We have been, I mean, this is documented and everything, but we have preferred to keep this quiet for the moment, because we wanted to do how it behaved in real life, and the bottom line, very shortly, is that it behaved very well, and it was we never had any issue with it. And again, you get the statistics, and you get integration with the CRM. That also is something that Qmetrics is able to do. And you get the agent's page, so the agent can earmark some specific calls for specific reasons, and can do login and log off, and can do a number of self-service activities that are quite useful, especially for large systems. While for small systems, it's something that just works. You provision through an API, and you don't have to think much about it. At the moment, we have, I believe, 4 clusters across. We have one in Europe, one in the US, one in South Africa, and one in Asia. And we are starting to see significant movement on the free switch side of things. So it's definitely something that we are working on, have been working on, and expect to be working on more in the future. So it's been, I mean, from the point of view of somebody like me, it's been pleasant to do. So for me, this is important. Pleasant meaning that sometimes things are complex, but you can get to a solution that you believe is a real solution. The fact that you have the sources, when you don't understand something, you say, okay, whatever, maybe I don't, the documentation was very good in general. And maybe because I was comparing it with the documentation that Asterisk had 15 years ago, that was basically, again, read the code. And but sometimes there was something that we were not sure about, and you can just go in and read how it's implemented and what it actually means. And this was nice. And again, playing with something new is always not always, but very often rewarding. So it's it was a good experience.
I'm glad. It sounds like a positive experience. Now we're just coming towards the end of our time together, and we were talking before we started the recording, and you said that Loway will probably be at ClueCon this year, and I'll just let everybody know that ClueCon is the 3rd to the 6th of August in downtown Chicago, and so it'd be great to have you or another Loway person along. Just a quick question: how do you end up calling it Loway, Lens? How did that name come about?
Well, first thing I'd like to say is that I used to, before I started my own stuff, I used to work for Andersen Consulting, it was called at the time, and and then became Accenture, and it was headquartered outside of Chicago. So my first experiences in the US were in Chicago, and it was so big. So it was a long time ago. So I'd really love to go back and see if things have changed and the way things have evolved in time. And I have very good memories about it. And about Loway, everybody says, oh, it must be Lorenzo, and it must be Lorenzo's way or something. And actually, no, it came out of a list of names that were meant to have no meaning, but were short and were available as a name. So it was not something that it was planned in any sense. I mean, I just thought that you needed a name for the business, and I didn't really spend a lot of time with it. And
there's not a romantic story attached to it.
No, it's just okay. Does the name exist? This name is in use. This is free. Okay, let's take it. So that was
okay. Now, just before we finish, Lens, is there any? I always ask this, or I try to always ask this to guests on ClueCon Weekly. Is there anything else you would like to mention before we say goodbye?
No, I think that the one thing that I'm noticing in general, talking about voice over IP, is that while 15 years ago was very hot, so everybody was so interested in it. Nowadays, it seems to be not a lot of people are going into voice over IP and telephony. So maybe there are things that look better or that have more exposure. I think that on one end, the community should do more to promote the ideas of what we do in voice over IP. And the other thing is that from an engineering point of view, voice over IP is very interesting because it's complex and sometimes it's hard. And so it's the kind of thing that as an engineer, you're definitely going to like working on. So it's plus it has a very direct life impact for people. So it's something that is really worthwhile. Maybe we don't do enough to promote this to people that are outside the voice over IP world.
Yes, I think that's a fair point. Well, Lorenzo, thank you, or Lenz, thank you very much for coming along and spending time with us on ClueCon Weekly. We'll look forward to seeing you or another Lowway representative at ClueCon in August. And I hope we see you again before too long, perhaps another ClueCon Weekly in a few months or a few years' time to tell us what the latest is.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye for